Welcome on into GoldSheet TV. NFL Week 2 is officially in the books, and now Neuby and I will waste no time recapping Week 2 and getting right into some Week 3 content. I want to remind everybody that liking the video and subscribing to the channel is the best way to help us grow. And also on WagerTalk.com, a 3-day pass for all access for the GoldSheet. Code GS3 drops that price down to $55. So if you want to take advantage of some of the MLB and NFL we have going on at the GoldSheet, do that over at WagerTalk.com. Neuby, we're going to start by, like we're going to do every week, recapping what we talked about on the show, recapping what we actually played for the GoldSheet team, and then obviously doing a little bit of overreactions and underreactions to the slate. So, Neuby, let's kick us off. You had some good calls last week. We had the Steelers. I loved them in a teaser. You loved them against the spread. You also were all over the Kansas City Chiefs. So talk to me about that game and any other just notes from your card this weekend that you want to go over.
Yeah, man, we were both all about getting 8.5 points with the Steelers. We didn't even need that many. They win outright last night. That defense, they deserve all of the credit in the world. So I even like them on the spread. So we got that one home at 2.5. We love teasers this week, and teasers, they were looking pretty good, especially if you had a lot of these advantage teasers. Think about that bad beat for people who were on the spread in the 49ers game. Well, if you tease them down, you got a winner on that game. So even sometimes the ones that don't fit the exact Wong mold, sometimes they could be profitable as well. But the teaser that I locked in here on the show, no thanks to our man behind the scenes, Robert, and H-Town, Houston can't get it home in the second leg of the teaser. The first was with Atlanta. I like them against the spread as they were facing off against Green Bay, but the case was made here for getting those extra points with the teaser, so that's what we'll grade it at. And then, as you said, with that Kansas City team, I thought they would be a little bit stronger in the first half. They did get the first half money line win, but if you played them on the spread, I said I like playing them either way, depending on your juice tolerance. So if you played them on the spread, that was a loser, but if we played them for the full game, that was a winner there. So the money line wins in the first half, the full game wins, but that first half spread lost. So I figured, depending on how people played it, we'll just grade it with that full game line. So I end up going 2-1 on the week with Pittsburgh, losing the teaser leg and then winning there with the Kansas City Chiefs. So that brings us to a ho-hum 3-2 on the year here. It's going to get better this week. If we're paying juice, we need to get that 3-2 up a little bit more. But I'm feeling good, man. I think we're seeing the board well here. We've been given all kinds of great info, and if we have, hit that like button, hit subscribe, because Eric and I are putting in the man hours to not only get you the winners, but get you some trends and some angles that maybe will arrive you at winners outside of just the picks we're giving out. But early start to the season, hey, we're not in the red just yet, so we like it, brother.
Yeah, something we got to mention also is just like we, of course, are here to give you actionable information. But again, of course, on behalf of the GoldSheet, we have our LTS picks on WagerTalk.com, which are what we end up playing. And of course, we have the newsletter picks that we will, have to. The people who buy that, we can't be giving out everything right away. With that being said, though, always trying to give you actionable information, like the Tennessee Titans plus 3.5. Didn't need those points as they went out right. That was given out then, and also on WagerTalk. Another touchdown I had, Ken Walker, that hit. A teaser, Buffalo, San Francisco on WagerTalk easy. I was with you on the Chiefs. I ended up playing that myself at the -3. And I know you want to talk some Chiefs again a little bit later in the show, and I have a lot to talk about when it comes to the Chiefs and Eric Bieniemy in Washington. So excited for that coming up. And then two losers. So after recording of the show, when you made the great point for the Falcons in the teaser, I wanted to kind of buy back the Packers in the teaser because that line flipped. By the time I'm looking at this game, that spread was all the way at Green Bay +3. Now, I've been talking about the Packers all week. What do I not do? I don't bet the Packers. Instead, I bet the under in that game, which ends up being a loser as those games go close. And another loser was the New York Jets. I don't know why I ever would put my money on Zach Wilson. Thought it was a market overcorrection.
You and me both. You and me both.
But I did. And unfortunately, that was a loser. But on the show, we have the 1-0. Well, for me, we'll go with 2-1 with the teaser leg, which I guess doesn't count. So we'll call it a 1-1. Then GoldSheet picks on WagerTalk.com. Team went 4-2 in the NFL this week, so that's always nice to see. Neuby, let's get into it. So something I love doing every morning when I'm writing the GoldSheet on Monday mornings and Tuesday mornings is just looking at what happened and basically kind of looking at what's kind of BS and what's something that you should look more into that actually could be actionable. An example of that would be something like sort of like the Chiefs that we'll talk about a little bit, but an overreaction I want to make based on the current state of the NFL, or I could say the AFC North, is the Ravens at the moment look like the best team in that division. And not only the best team in that division, considering how the AFC is shaping out to be, it looks like they're the second best team in the entire conference with the Kansas City Chiefs, and obviously you can make the argument for the Buffalo Bills. Before I give a little bit of thoughts, comments, and concerns here, talk to me. Baltimore Ravens, do you see them as this contender like I do to not just win the AFC North but the actual Super Bowl? Or am I just overreacting to a win against the depleted Bengals team with an injured Joe Burrow?
If you go back when we had our forced pick show where we literally went round by round, here's what we think could happen in the playoffs, I said this Ravens team could be hoisting the Lombardi. Now, I think they've gotten there a little bit less flashy than I thought. I thought this new look offense was going to be flying all around the field, putting up yards in bunches, but still Lamar Jackson has been a little bit pedestrian for me. They're going to be facing off against the Colts this week. So again, I don't know how much of a litmus test we're going to get there, but I'm with you, man, because I think what we've seen through 2 weeks, and maybe this is a little bit of an overreaction, it's really looking like heading into the year, it was, look at how dominant the AFC is. It's going to be such a slugfest in the AFC. And then the NFC, you have a couple top teams and then everything else. It's looking like that's kind of flipped here. Like the NFC seems like it is just through 2 weeks, the stronger conference out of the two. And that only strengthens the case of a Baltimore Ravens who's maybe starting a little bit slow out of the gate. They lose J.K. Dobbins in week 1, but clearly that rushing effect or rushing attack wasn't hurt too much. So I'm right there with you. I'd like to see this offense finally figure out what their identity is, because I think they're still doing a little bit of soul searching, but that's what the early part of the year is for. So, again, I'm not a future guy. I don't throw in Super Bowl tickets. It's just not how I manage my bankroll. But, if I could come on here later and say, I told you so, I'm not going to talk you out of talking about how strong the Ravens are. And look at the division that they're in. It's definitely looking like they're the cream of the crop there, especially with the big injury to the running back last night, Nick Chubb. So I don't know if this is an overreaction. It might just be a reaction that kind of makes sense there, Eric.
That's a good way to put it. I guess when I was more down on Baltimore coming into this year, it's I guess taking a little bit for me to now come back around. I was just bullish, or excuse me, I was bearish on, obviously I was a big Lamar Jackson fan. I am still a big Lamar Jackson fan. Love seeing him do well. But when you have him go into this whole new offense, there's, of course, going to be a little bit of time to get it all together. But what I'm mostly impressed about with the Ravens, and again, this is why I think it's overreaction, because it's only been, a season and 2 games. But I think what Mike Macdonald has done as a defensive coordinator is going a little bit under the radar, because I spoke about on this show a little bit ad nauseum how I thought that this Ravens defense was primed to take a step back, and talent-wise are not at the level that they should be at. But the way that they played the first 2 weeks, I get against a hobble Burrow and against a rookie in his debut, I'm actually very impressed with Macdonald, and I think that he could be a little bit of an X factor for this Ravens team. Then if you have Lamar Jackson doing what he did on the field, it doesn't matter that Joe Burrow was hurt, because Joe Burrow doesn't play defense. Lamar was absolutely kind of dicing and doing everything that we know Lamar Jackson can do. So I was just very impressed with the Ravens. And the last point to make, so obviously J.K. Dobbins getting hurt sucks. Never want to see anybody get hurt, especially a talented guy like him who's been hurt his entire career, unfortunately. He was in a contract holdout all summer, most of the summer, I should say, and he's been hurt most of his career. So I'm not nervous about the Ravens' outlook without him, because they're used to playing without him. The Browns, for example, obviously Nick Chubb is the engine that goes for the Browns, the best offensive player on the team, best running back of the NFL last couple of years, bar none, King Henry. But the Browns will be able to adjust, right? They'll be able to lose some production from running back, undoubtedly, because you're talking about the best player in the league, but the Browns are going to be okay. So I don't think this is an overreaction because, now Nick Chubb's hurt, the Steelers look kind of bad, and Cam Hayward's hurt, and Joe Burrow's hurt. Now it's the Ravens' division to lose. On one hand, yes, that's kind of what I'm saying. But on the other hand, I don't think it's also just to say the Ravens are only going to win because of the circumstance. I think the Ravens are a hell of a football team, and I think that this added element on defense that McDonald's bringing is underrated when I thought it was bad to start with. I'm glad I changed my opinion. I am liking what I'm seeing from the Ravens, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon, especially with just the Colts coming into town. Yeah. But Neuby, really quick, and I hope our producer Robo, if you have the graphic, I'd love to get it up. part of the recap on the Gold Sheet last week, I called the final score of the Ravens, not the Ravens, of the Saints Panthers game, had that 20-17, dot to a T. The breakdown of the analysis was honestly on point. Just needed to give a little flex. I didn't have a ticket on or anything like that, but quick little flex. I called that 2017 win. And if you are subscribed to the Gold Sheet, you would have had that. That was one of the featured tech angle plays of the week. But Neuby, another overreaction. So the San Francisco 49ers head to Los Angeles to play the Rams. They do not cover on that backdoor field goal that Sean McVay can claim whatever he wants to claim about not knowing the spread, but there had to be something a little bit odd going on there. Regardless, Niners, I can't say looked amazing because they didn't. At the same time, the Rams, they're fully healthy. Matt Stafford's playing. They kind of won that game because they won the turnover battle. But what are you seeing or not seeing from this Niners team just moving forward? Is this a team that's poised to make another run? Or is this team, going to fade into the dust a little bit? Because, we saw Purdy miss a bunch of throws. What's your stance right now on this 49er team?
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned Purdy missing a couple throws because I know the 49ers fans are about to line up in the comments and bash me when I say that it's an overreaction 2 weeks in to be saying the 49ers are clearly the best team in the NFL. We've heard the talking heads fall in love with them after just 1 week of play. They destroy the Steelers, and then what happens? They don't cover against the Rams. So before the season, I think when people are starting to change their tune on the Rams, that's something that I said heading into the year. Hey, I wouldn't write them off just because of the horrible year that they had last season. Don't get me wrong, though. I do think the 49ers are a top team in the league. Like, I don't think they're going to be fading. I think they're still going to be in the conversation. However, but to see them vault up as now being Super Bowl favorites at pretty much every sports book after just 2 weeks of play, I can't quite go there because as you mentioned with Purdy, I think the other shoe is still going to drop on this guy. He hasn't had an interception yet this year. That's not going to be sustainable. He's racking up different amount of hits. The offensive line is just one injury, and I know you could always say with any team, it's always an injury away. They're one injury away from having a not just average offensive line, like a pedestrian offensive line. And it's not like Brock Purdy is going to be Lamar Jackson running out of scrambles, making things happen with his legs. And if you even just look at that game with the Rams, okay, whatever, backdoor cover, however you want to say it, at the end of the day, they didn't meet market expectation. And the Rams outgained them in total yards, despite this high-flying offense that we talk about. Christian McCaffrey can run over everyone. He did that, but then you look at when it comes push to shove. I look at third down conversion rates for a lot of teams because that when down the stretch, that's where games are going to be won and lost. They were just 2-9 on third down against the Rams. And in that Steelers blowout, they were still below 50%. They were 6 of 13 on third down. So that's a number that I'm tracking with this 49ers team. When Brock Purdy gets in those you need to make it happen situations through 2 weeks, sure, they're 2-0, but that hasn't happened just yet. So I think the big thing for me on the 49ers, now, don't get me wrong. I don't think the shoe is going to be dropping against the New York Giants, but it's something to track. Brock Purdy and this love affair with the guy. Remember, he did get passed over umpteen times and was the last pick in the draft. I know that that's ancient history now, but I'm just saying, Brock Purdy, Super Bowl MVP for me, I don't see it just quite yet. And I think that's going to be the ultimate difference maker. When push comes to shove, Purdy's mistake is going to happen. Is it going to happen in a big game that costs him? That's something I'm going to be watching. I wouldn't be buying any Super Bowl tickets on the 49ers just yet.
Yeah, and especially like you mentioned, considering how well the rest of the NFC has played, again, through 2 weeks, you could, go levels of competition, this and that. So I'm totally with you. And we're going to be talking more 49ers at the tail end of the show because they are playing on Thursday Night Football, so we'll get into more detail there. I don't know who exactly I saw said this on Twitter, but it makes a ton of sense. Not like groundbreaking news, but when you think about it, it makes a ton of sense. Brock Purdy's missing throws, despite the fact that they won all these games with him last year, it's not a new thing. He was not great last season. Now, this entire summer, he spent rehabbing an arm injury, so it's not like he was spending time working on these overthrows and these miscued throws that he had all last season. And then now we've already seen it spill over into this year. So I'm not ready to be fully out on Purdy because, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that, yes, if you're injured all summer, you're going to not be as good to start the season. We've seen it with Lamar, Joe Burrow, great quarterbacks we've seen it with. So, okay, you get the pass there. But I am a little bit bearish on what Brock Purdy's ceiling with this 49ers team can do. And if they play the way they did against the Rams, again, divisional opponent, team that knows them well, team that they do dominate historically. But again, week 2, don't want to be making any too crazy declarations like I am about my Packers and about the Ravens. But I'm with you there that we could definitely tone it down a little bit on the Niners, even though they are going to win by 20 on Thursday. But we'll get to that shortly. Now, I guess underreaction, some things that I guess from what we've seen that we aren't buying stock in the narrative or we're just low on moving forward. I don't believe in the Atlanta Falcons. I know Desmond Ridder did a couple of things to, maybe alleviate some concerns toward the end of that Packers game. In my opinion, they didn't do enough. Bijan Robinson is better than advertised. That guy is electric. But I don't know that you can win meaningful football games just running the football. They gained over 200 yards on the ground against the Packers, but the Packers' run defense has been suspect for the last 3 years. Neuby, what are your thoughts on the Falcons? Because for me, I just don't think that this combination of a good, not great defense and just a run game with no ability of a drop-back pass game, like you can't win games, meaningful games down the stretch like that.
It looks like Desmond Ridder cannot get the ball down the field even a little bit, man. Like even on the passes that end up getting completed, you're just scratching your head wondering how did that knuckleball get where it needed to go? Part of the reason why I liked Atlanta was I thought, in week 1, Ridder didn't look great. He didn't look awful. He just looks pedestrian. He's a guy that you have to game plan around and find a way to not have him hurt you is what it's starting to seem like. And now they got to take on the Detroit Lions in Detroit coming off of a loss. I know that people are flying high on the Falcons, especially since they beat Green Bay last week, but even that win seemed like one that they kind of got away with one. And regardless, in the NFL, all you need to do is get one done. But I'm with you. In the NFL in 2023, when it's a run-first attack that isn't a dynamic run-first attack like you see in the 49ers, it's hard for me to get excited about a team. And especially, as you mentioned, the defense doesn't do much to strike fear in your heart. You don't really have a big playmaker that really makes your eyes pop out of your head with the Falcons. They're decent, but with a strong offense that'll have multiple attack ways to attack you, like this Detroit Lions team, especially at home. I could see the Detroit Lions winning coming up here, going away, and kind of expose a lot of the issues that you're maybe seeing here with the Atlanta Falcons. So I'm kind of with you. Good, not great, in my opinion, is what you're getting from the Atlanta Falcons.
They beat the Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young's first start in the NFL looked abysmal, and the Panthers are some of the worst weapons in the entire National Football League. Then they they came back, so anybody could say that maybe Ridder is able to complete a comeback, but against a mediocre at best Packers defense. Again, on offensively, that Packers team was missing their best player in Aaron Jones and their best outside option in Christian Watson, and their second best, Romeo Doubs, was banged up and not playing full snap count there. So, yeah, I am down on Atlanta because this is going to be a great test. If Detroit is able to go down the field and score points early in this game, I need to be able to see if Desmond Ridder can actually go out and win these games. Now, I've seen in his first couple of starts, he's engineered some comebacks and whatnot, but I'm not buying it. I know that numbers don't lie, but if you can't, or if you get down in the NFL by, 14 points or 10 points, 2 possessions, I know they were down 13 and ended up coming back and winning. I get it. Again, I'm not overly impressed. I need to see it against a better defense, which they're not going to be getting in the Lions. But I do need to see them, Ridder and the rest of this team, be able to play from behind and not just in front. Because I do have a feeling that even if this team is behind, they're going to do a little bit of what the Bears do with Justin Fields and not throw the ball anyway because they can't. And Justin Fields being a disaster. It's not something we wanted to cover on this show as we did last week, but we could digression aside, Justin Fields is a disaster. But Neuby, this is an interesting topic. I want to hear you discuss it because I have a ton of thoughts on both sides of this coin. Kansas City Chiefs, I don't want to say barely beat the Jaguars, which though they technically did barely beat them, it was a close game. The Washington Commanders, they barely beat the Denver Broncos, but don't want to say barely beat because it came down to a Hail Mary crazy play, then a 2-point conversion, which again, technically barely beat. But box score breakdowns and full game breakdowns, these games seem to be a lot they should have been bigger wins for both of those teams, if you ask me, in my opinion. But the one thing that held these teams together was that Eric Bieniemy was the OC of the Kansas City Chiefs. Now he's the OC/assistant head coach of the Commanders. We've seen the Commanders offense score 35 points. I've never seen that before in my life. Obviously joking, but as a Commanders fan, points were hard to come by. And the Chiefs only putting up 17 against the Jaguars, who are known to have one of the worst passing defenses in the league. Long-winded road to get there, but Neuby, talk to me. What did you see from both of those two teams, and kind of what are your thoughts on what's going on here? Because I have my thoughts as well.
Yeah, I just think the fact that Eric Bieniemy year after year gets passed over when it comes to head coaching talk, it's just mind-blowing to me, because just think of the market perception for both of these teams heading into the season. Washington projected and still projected to finish as one of the worst teams in the NFL, and the Chiefs, obviously Super Bowl favorites, this, that, the other thing, high-flying offense, blah, blah, blah. The common denominator between how good Washington looks offensively, albeit, kind of pedestrian week one against a Cardinals defense who, for what it's worth, Cardinals defense looks like it's a little bit better than they were expected when they aren't directed to completely blow a game against the Giants. But that's for another day and another conversation. But the common denominator between these two teams, the struggles and frustrations offensively for Kansas City and the great output of this Washington offense through 2 weeks, is Eric Bieniemy. And heading into the year, I just can't believe that you even saw in a week 2 matchup, I don't care who it was against, the Washington Commanders putting up 35 with Sam Howell at quarterback. Sam Howell was over 200 yards in week 1. He almost had 300 yards in week 2. And for all the woes of the Denver Broncos that you can talk about, one thing that's always been the constant is they have a pretty darn good defense, and especially what they're able to do in pass defense. And they were just lighting them up. Sam Howell making really good decisions. Brian Robinson looking like he is potentially going to be even better of a player than people maybe expected, especially coming off of the unfortunate situation where he took a bullet to the leg last year. He ran all over him. I know the yard output wasn't there, but some of just the way that he was able to make space in that game against the Broncos, super impressive to me. And I think a lot of it comes down to what they're doing schematically. They don't really have many playmakers outside of Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin that are going to make your eyes pop out of your head. But when you put players in position, NFL players in position to make plays happen, things are going to happen, and that's what happened for this Washington team. It'll be interesting to see, can they continue this? But I just think Eric Bieniemy does not get enough credit. I didn't think he got enough credit in Kansas City. And I think if you look at the lack of offensive output through 2 weeks, they're going to figure it out. Don't get me wrong. The Chiefs are going to be just fine, but they're scratching their head trying to find out schematically what we can do. And some of the play calling for the Chiefs has just been god awful. I mean, in that Lions game, part of why they lost was because Matt Nagy comes in and puts his sticky fingers all over that offense, and you start seeing poorly called sweeps, awfully, timed up trickery that they go for. So I don't think that the Chiefs are dead. I don't think the Washington Commanders should be Super Bowl favorites, but 2 weeks in, the Eric Bieniemy effect is clear for me on what he brings to a team, and when he leaves a team, what follows in his wake. This is a guy who, if he doesn't get a head coaching job anytime soon, then the NFL is certainly broken in that regard, and that's just through 2 weeks of watching.
Yeah, and it's so funny that you say that, because also, in the preseason, there was literally players complaining to Ron Rivera, and then Ron Rivera went to the media saying that Eric Bieniemy is pushing these guys too hard. This team is 2-0. You can talk about beating the worst team in football and then beating up a shitty Broncos team, which maybe they shouldn't have even won, but at the end of the day, it's a 2-0 football team. I'm a Washington Commanders fan. I've watched every single game over my entire life. I took 2 personal plays for this game, because there were negative EV plays. I've never given them out to any clients of the GoldSheet or anything like that. I took Denver in a 4-team money line parlay, because the DraftKings set a boost money line, and I had Denver money line and the under 48.5 even odds.
They were my survivor pick was Denver. Yeah. So I'm with you.
And I advocated for that. I'm a person who, my favorite survivor picks of the week were Buffalo, New York, Giants, and Denver. Regardless, I have never seen Washington put up yards the way that they did. I've never seen Washington call a timeout and then run a screen pass to Antonio Gibson on a second and like 11, and then actually go for like 40 yards. Like I have never seen that happen coming out of a timeout. So I was so low on my own team's offense, which in retrospect is my mistake because obviously we have a new quarterback this year and a new offensive coordinator. What I knew when I saw Taylor Heineke under center and when Scott Turner calling the plays. Like I could read those games like a children's book. I need to readjust my rankings a little bit on Washington because I, even as a fan, am now pleasantly surprised because what we've seen from Eric Bieniemy in terms of just running an offense that is balanced, running it where everybody's getting touches. Like Antonio Gibson is getting plays at the backfield. Brad Robinson's rushing numbers were low, but his receiving numbers were high. They had weapons, Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin, and the way that they used their 3 tight ends because Logan Thomas is banged up, but they have 2 guys in Cole Turner, John Bates, not household names that can do some good things. And if Sam Howell keeps the stat sheet clean in terms of the turnovers, was Washington's defense also proved they could be great. On the flip side, though, Kansas City Chiefs. I today, this morning, 9/19 Tuesday, bet the Chiefs plus 700 to win the Super Bowl. Why? Because it's a great addition to your futures portfolio. Because like we've mentioned, Neuby, there was no value in them preseason. But now, even after barely beating the Jags, but if you look at the box score, they destroyed the Jaguars. Those 3 turnovers are only what killed the Chiefs. That game should have been a 20-point Chiefs win. They beat up a team that's supposed to be a contender in the AFC. Now you have the Browns looking bad, the Bengals looking bad, the Chargers looking bad, the Jets being out of the equation. You're not getting a better price than right now in the Kansas City Chiefs. So plus 700, I snagged that. And while I do agree with you that the Bieniemy effect is real, and the Chiefs seem to be suffering a little bit so far, and the Commanders seem to be reaping the benefits, I'm still all in on the Kansas City Chiefs offense and this team. I think the way they beat up Jacksonville, again, like we said in our preview, Jacksonville is being priced like a legitimate contender. Prove it. What'd they do? They did not prove it whatsoever. The Chiefs show that they're still the cream of the crop. They played like crap, and they still won by 8 points and outgained them and should have won that game by a much wider margin. So I'm with you. Eric Bieniemy couldn't be happier. He resides now in Washington, D.C. with my Commanders. But Neuby, let's wrap up by talking San Francisco, New York. At the time of recording, not many props are out. I think a lot of it has to do with Saquon Barkley now missing some time. Not sure how the Giants running back rotation is going to look. Again, you have the New York Giants who barely by the skin of their teeth beat the Arizona Cardinals. You have the 49ers who kind of sleptwalked through that game with the Rams. Honestly, probably should not have won by margin, even by the 10 points, besides the kick they had, the field goal with the Rams. It's not a really great game for the Niners. But Neuby, quick preview because we don't have a ton of actionable things for it. Like, just what are you thinking from the jump? We had a 44.5 to 45 point total, depending where you look on the WagerTalk Live Odds screen, and a spread of 10.5 or 11. So Neuby, what are you thinking here?
I'm thinking you maybe get some plans on Thursday night. I don't know if I'll even be excited to watch this one, man. It's a sheer pass for me. I think you could way quicker talk me into laying any points with the 49ers than backing this Giants team who's probably going to be without Saquon Barkley. It took one of the most historic second halves in NFL history. And that's not hyperbolic with what Daniel Jones did in the comeback against who? The Arizona Cardinals, who are openly trying to get a high draft capital. So, I think you could way quicker talk me into laying doubles here than backing the Giants. It's going to be a pass for me. That total, especially for a primetime game, it seems a tick high for my taste, especially with what you're going to probably get out of the Giants offense. But again, nothing actionable for me there. When I was prepping up, I was looking for props because when I don't love a game and if I'm, trying to find a way to potentially attack it and get some plays here out on the GoldSheet TV, I like looking at the props. Aren't many. I think a lot of that has to do with the question mark around Saquon as far as getting any Giants props out there. But I did see, and I never suggest these. Anytime that a book is telling you, hey, here's boosted odds, run the other way, don't walk. But I do find it a little bit interesting. They do this fresh from the field thing on DraftKings, and one of their props that they have up, it's plus 350 for Christian McCaffrey to go over 100 on the ground and score a rushing touchdown. Now, again, I'm not saying pull off the rubber band. Maybe this is a little pizza money to pay for your dinner that you're watching, but Christian McCaffrey, both games this year, has rushed for over 100 yards. Going back to last year, he scored a touchdown in 8 straight games since being a member of the Kansas City Chiefs. He's scored every time except 3 games that they've played, and a lot of those his usage dropped down a little bit. So Christian McCaffrey to have over 100 yards against the Giants and score a touchdown, plus 350, it might be something that I sprinkle on. But outside of that, nothing here for me. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, nothing here for me. Like you said, you could much easily convince me to take the Niners and the 10.5. Obviously, at that point, look for the 10, so you could push on the 10. If it gets down to 9.5, of course, key number is try to get under that 10. Obviously, don't pay the juice for it. But unless the 49ers just straight up play down to the Giants, there's just no way the New York Giants should be that competitive in this football game. And that is possible. We've seen it with a bunch of different teams. But what the New York Giants have proven through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season is that they're not going to beat good teams, again, unless that good team gives them the football game. The Giants got by last year by simply not losing games, which is different than winning games, right? Like it totally is. Like being conservative and making the right play at the right time, that all is going to be put into the variance that's going to end up, you can't always make the right play and do the right thing like they did last year. And the fact that they start off the season getting blown out 40-0 and then barely beating the worst team in football, it's just more of an indication that that wasn't like a, rallying call for this team. Like, oh, they're back. Like that was desperation at its finest. Because if they started 0-2, not to be dramatic, but you probably could have chalked up the rest of the Giants season the way that the NFC is already shaking out. They didn't. Now they head to the 49ers where they have a chance to, prove that they belonged in the playoffs last year and are one of the better or at least competitive teams in the NFC. But I just don't see it. Like the Cardinals with no names, you have James Conner, but they're no-name offensive line running the football down their throats for almost 150 yards. Then you now are going to have Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle to block or cover, block, tackle. And then defensively you have Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, that whole 49ers front coming at this Giants offensive line that has not been good for a while and is definitely not that good this season. This game has all the makings for the 49ers to put an absolute beating on them. So like Neuby said, if the wife wants to go for a movie night or something, Thursday nights are probably always off limits, but you could probably sneak one in on this Thursday because I'm not expecting much in this game. Definitely not expecting a GoldSheet play unless we do find a prop in this matchup. But like we said, time recording, nothing out there. So sorry for not having something that actionable, but we're doing the best of what we could.
EP, I got one before we sign off here. You can grade me on this one. We'll circle back and we'll talk about it next week. But one that I have just locked in myself because it just popped up. I love my kicker props. So on the way out, I'm going with Jake Moody, kicker of the 49ers, over 1.5 field goals. It's plus 105 right now, and that's a price that will not be there in coming weeks. Jake Moody in both first games, even in the blowout against the Steelers, they've shown that they will take points when they can get them. Against the Giants, they're not going to need to score a bunch of touchdowns to win this game. They'll settle for 3 every now and then, and he has hit 3 field goals on 3 field goals attempted in both of the first games. He's a perfect 6 for 6 on the year. Jake Moody at plus money on a Thursday night ugly game. Give me him over the 1.5 field goals. That will be an official play that we can grade on. So there, we got something on the way out, brother.
There we go. I love that. Actual info, Jake Moody, kicker, over 1.5 field goals. And I agree with your analysis. Something that Shanahan's getting actually a little bit of got some heat on is that sometimes on 4th down when he probably should be going forward, he's kicking these field goals. Then you have also the other school of thought where what's wrong with points? You need points to win. Sometimes you got to take those points. So I'm certainly with you there, brother. But that'll wrap up GoldSheet TV for this week. My Twitter handle or X handle at Slime Action. You can find Neuby on Twitter /X at Neuby Talks. Again, liking the video and commenting with your takes are the best way to help us grow. Also subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back on Thursday with regularly scheduled programming, breaking down 5 games, giving some actionable info. And we really appreciate all the listeners. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.